Amen. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Howard. I'm one of the pastors here at Revision, and I'm excited to be here today. How about you? Yeah. All right. Well, I'm fired up that you made it through the wintry weather to be here for the beginning of our brand new Christmas series, Manger Things. Pretty excited for this. Pretty excited for the month of December. We got some great stuff planned, but the name for this series is a parody of the TV show Stranger Things. I don't know how many of you have ever seen it. Well, Stranger Things is a show set in the 80s, and it's a sci-fi show about how there's this government lab in a tiny little town in Indiana that accidentally creates an alternate dimension called the Upside Down, and there's some supernatural, scary stuff from the Upside Down that messes with the people who are living there. And I just think that is a phenomenal picture of Christmas, don't you? Should looking at each other like, I don't think Mike knows what Christmas is about at all. That's not, Christmas is about presents and lights and jingle bells and carols and having the happiest time of the year. It is not about a nefarious lab creating monsters that kidnap children. Santa would be so upset if he heard that. Mike's going on the naughty list. Bear with me. I know that Christmas is not about frightening monsters, and I know that in the show, the Upside Down is a bad thing. But here's the deal. I can't help but look around me. I look at people in my neighborhood, in this city. I can't help but read the news reports around our country and across the globe and feel this deep longing inside my soul for something more, something greater than humanity has to offer. I just think we need a solution that's bigger and better than the ones we've come up with so far, because all around us, we see hatred and oppression, brokenness and death. I think that's what Christmas is all about. Christmas is about God stepping out of the dimension of eternity and invading the human story. It's about him allowing his light to crash into our darkness, becoming one of us so that he could heal up our brokenness, reconcile us to God, and turn everything that's broken in our world completely upside down. And over the course of this series, we're going to talk about some of that stuff, some manger things that change the way we are living in this world, some stuff that's real and tangible for us because Jesus was born. And on a personal level, I'm pretty fired up about that because I need some manger things to change my life this Christmas. I had a really rough Wednesday. I was getting my 4-year-old twins dressed on Wednesday morning, and Tommy looked at me and said, "Dad, your bald head makes you look like a corn dog." What do you even do with that? I don't know. And Billy looked at me and said, "Are you ever going to grow hair?" And then my 6-year-old Emma laughed and said, "No, he can't." So I'm rolling into this Christmas season pretty depressed about my hair situation and about the fact that I've now been informed I look like a corn dog. Actually, I'm not even depressed. In the last few days, I've gone through all the stages of grief. I've gone to acceptance. It is what it is. But I'm aware that there are a whole lot of us here this morning who do feel a little bit of weight and a little bit of heaviness as Christmas approaches. There are a lot of us who could use some major things to turn our reality upside down. And maybe not all of us. Maybe some of you are sitting there and you're just filled with Christmas cheer, and you're like Grant, and the season started for you a month ago because you don't know how to give thanks. You just move on to materialism, and you've been listening to terrible music for weeks, and you're listening for 5 more, and you're loving it, and you're full of jolliness, and that's great. Seriously, thank God for that. That's a huge blessing. But I know there are some of us sitting here who aren't feeling like that at all. We're worried, and we're scared, and we're frustrated, and we're hurting right now. We don't feel joyful. We feel vulnerable and broken. Like some of you will always remember 2018 as the year you lost a loved one, whether it was a mom or a dad, a brother or a sister, a friend, and you're really not looking forward to the first holiday season without them sitting around the table. Some of you are dreading Christmas because your families are broken up and you know you're going to get shuttled from house to house to house, and at every place you're going to be expected to put on a happy face and pretend like life is just the way you wanted it to be. Some of you struggling with work or school. You feel like it's just a burden that you don't know how much longer you can carry. Some of you are sick, or you have loved ones who are sick, and you don't know what the prognosis looks like. Some of you feel like there's just so much pressure. Too many people in too many places tugging at you and tugging at your attention. It's just a little bit overwhelming. Some of you are sitting here just feeling lost, lonely, and abandoned. Some of you don't even know why, but you feel depressed. Like so many of us are looking at our lives right now, and it just is difficult, because they don't look the way we wanted them to look, and we start to doubt whether the future we wanted for ourselves is even possible at this point. We just feel the last reservoirs of hope drying up inside our souls. What do we do with that? What do we do with Christmas? Like, how do we navigate the distance between the reality of our lives and the joy and merriment of this season that surrounds us? I think sometimes we just fake it. We put on a happy smile and fake our way through the season because we don't want to be called a Scrooge or a Grinch, which is what inevitably happens if you don't sip the eggnog and join the caroling in December. So we just put on the ugly Christmas sweater and go to the family gathering, even though we'd rather be anywhere else in the world, and we take the pictures and fake our way through it. Or sometimes we don't fake it. We just dive in and we use this season to numb our pain. There are people out there in the world who spend 11 months desperately looking forward to Christmas because it provides us with just a little bit of an escape. We can look at all the pretty decorations, we can turn on the jolly music, we can get the presents, and all that stuff and all those gifts make us forget for just a little bit of time that January is coming and it's bringing the real world with it. It's just a diversion for pain, and so we use the Christmas season as like this time to try and forget about all of it, and we let candy canes become our delicious little peppermint narcotics. Like more than a few of us are in that space right now. Most of us have been there. All of us know somebody who's been there. All we got to do is open our eyes and look around to see a world that's full of darkness and full of hurting and full of pain and a whole bunch of people who are running out of hope. And the good news is that God has something to say to that. He has something to say to us this morning, you and me and Revision Church. And it's the same thing he had to say to his people almost 3,000 years ago. So you have your Bible this morning. You can open it up to the book of Isaiah, chapter 9. Isaiah's like smack dab in the middle. If you go to the middle, you'll be close. If you hit Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, go forward. And Jeremiah, go back. But Isaiah 9, 1 through 7 contains this prophetic vision that God gave to Isaiah to deliver to the nation of Judah 700 years before Jesus was born. If you don't have a Bible, you can follow along with the words on the screen or in the Revision app. And if you don't own one or your kids don't, please take one for the Next Steps table on your way out today. We'd love for you to have one. But Isaiah 9, 1 through 7, this is what it says. Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who are in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. A quick time out. Why Zebulun and Naphtali? Those were the northernmost tribes. When Israel conquered the promised land and they divided up, Zebulun and Naphtali got the north, and the north is where everyone attacked from. So all the time, everybody who ever fought them, they killed Zebulun and Naphtali first. So he's saying in the past, the land of Zebulun and Naphtali were humbled, but in the future, he will honor Galilee, which is way up north of the nations. And Galilee, this is an important Jesus prophecy because nobody cared about Galilee. It was in the northern kingdom. It wasn't even anywhere near where Isaiah was. They couldn't have cared less. It was a nothing town. But God's saying, in the past, those lands were the ones that were attacked first. That's where nobody wanted to live. But in the future, he's going to honor Galilee of the nations. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You've enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, and this is a reference back to Gideon, a guy who took 300 men and defeated a whole army with God's help. As in the day of Midian's defeat, you've shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning. It will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he'll be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. This is such a powerful, incredible, beautiful, poetic prophecy. And the way that Jesus fulfilled it when he was born, like with everything that he did in his lifetime, is incredible. But I can't help but wonder as I read it, why did the people of Judah need to hear about this 700 years before it was going to happen? Assuming that this prophecy is more than a parlor trick, God just showing us years later that he can predict the future, how in the world was it helpful for the people to whom Isaiah delivered it? Like, why did they need to know that a light was coming and a wonderful counselor was on the way? What kind of darkness were they living in, and what kind of counsel were they receiving? Well, we can actually get a glimpse of that by rewinding in the Bible just a little bit back into Isaiah chapter 8. The last words of Isaiah 8 right before this tell us the story. It says, when someone tells you to consult mediums and spiritists who whisper and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God? Why consult the dead on behalf of the living? Consult God's instruction and the testimony of warning. If anyone does not speak according to this word, they have no light of dawn. Distressed and hungry, they will roam through the land. When they're famished, they will become enraged, and looking upward will curse their king and their God. They will look toward the earth and see only distress and darkness and fearful gloom. And they will be thrust into utter darkness. So here's what's going on in the country of Judah in these days. The people had adopted this practice of all the pagan countries surrounding them of asking the dead when they needed some wisdom. When they were looking for advice, they'd pull out their Ouija boards and ask the spirits of their ancestors to try and give them some sort of hope and some sort of good advice. But the problem was the advice they were getting was terrible. It was evil. And it's easy for us to sit here thousands of years later with our modern minds and be like, of course it was terrible. Who would think, like, I could really use some wisdom here. I should ask a dead guy. No one would think that. Only an idiot would do that. And on the one hand, when we think that, we'd be right. Only an idiot would do that. On the other hand, the king of Judah at the time was this guy named Ahaz, and he was an idiot. Total idiot. It's interesting, but some archaeologists recently unearthed an etching that shows us what Ahaz looked like, and he actually looked like an idiot. Check it out. This is true history right here. They just found in Jerusalem. But anyway, like this is Ahaz. This is what he's like, and he's a guy who, like, much like Lloyd Christmas, just continually did the wrong thing. Listened to the worst advice from the worst people, and it caused a whole lot of suffering and eventually spun his nation into captivity, just like the nation above him. See, the southern kingdom of Judah was free at this time, and the northern kingdom of Israel had been conquered by the world's superpower of the day, the Assyrians. They basically come in and massacred the people and carried tens of thousands of them off into captivity in a faraway land. And Judah looked at that and they're like, well, I know God said he'd protect us, but I don't think he can protect us from that. So we'll just pay the Assyrians a really heavy tax so we can be free. But eventually they couldn't afford it anymore, so they stopped paying the tax and they rebelled, and the Assyrians came in and smoked them, and it cost thousands upon thousands of lives. So this time when Isaiah writes these words is a time of great political suffering. And it's also a time of great spiritual suffering. The spiritual leaders of the nation of Israel were completely morally bankrupt, and they led the people towards these foreign gods and towards chasing after idols and these practices that were violations of everything God said he made them to be. And so politically, economically, socially, and spiritually, it's this time of great darkness that was only getting darker. This is a situation at the end of Isaiah chapter 8. Chapter 8 ends in death and gloom and darkness and anguish. And God's people are battered, beaten, poor, looking out at a world that's getting darker with every passing minute, and their hope is just about dried up. And it's into that space that God delivers the prophecy of Isaiah 1:9 through 7. It's into the blackness of their spiritual night that he speaks the words, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. And what's the source of that light? A son, a child given to us. And we have the benefit of hindsight. We look back 2,700 years and we know that that son was named Jesus and that Jesus was hope worth hoping in. But I want to invite you just for a second to try and suspend your historical knowledge and put yourself in the shoes of someone living in Judah in 700 BC. Things are awful. It doesn't seem like there's any hope moving forward. You've been praying, you've been waiting for God to do something, anything, because you don't know how much longer you can survive. You don't know if they're going to come in and murder you and kill your family tomorrow. You're dying for a word from the Lord, and Isaiah shows up, and he's like, guys, I got a prophecy from God. You'd be like, oh, yes, finally, thank God, yes. Isaiah, what do you have to say? And Isaiah's like, God said, be a baby. There'll be a baby. I don't know if you're anything like me, but I feel like what I would have said in response to that is, that is not what I was hoping for at all. Like, what good is a baby gonna do? I don't know if you guys have ever met a baby. I have, so you didn't have to take my word for it. They are not helpful for anything. Nothing, especially defeating a vicious empire. Like, what help is a baby going to be to these oppressed people? None. Unless it's some sort of magic baby with superpowers. Like maybe, a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, an everlasting Father, or a Prince of Peace. Maybe, just maybe, a baby like that is worth hoping in. Because maybe, just maybe, a baby like that can do something. I don't think, you guys, we can possibly underestimate the significance of those 4 names. When Isaiah says this baby will be a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, an everlasting Father, and a Prince of Peace, it changes the game for the audiences sitting there listening, because names are important. And we get that on some level. Names are important to us. We agonize over giving our kids the right name that will project, something positive about who they are, and it's a struggle. For my family, it was a huge struggle because my wife taught high school math, and 9 out of every 10 names in the baby book, she'd be like, no, I hate that kid. I had him in geometry. We're never naming a kid that. If you're in here and you're middle school or high school, maybe that's a good life goal. Just try to grow up without any of your teachers deciding to never name their kid your name because they hate it so much. But neither here nor there. We care about names. But take that times 1,000,000, and that's how important names were to the ancient Hebrews. And so what we have to understand about this passage is that those 4 names are the key source of the hope that God was offering his people. And I want to take a look at what they mean this morning, because I think they're still a source of hope for us today. And we need hope in this messed up world. Hope is a manger thing. Hope is a manger thing. Okay, so what does it mean that Jesus is a wonderful counselor? Well, the root meanings of these 2 words in Hebrew are wonder and wisdom. So when Isaiah says that this one who's coming is going to be a wonderful counselor, he's saying that this one is coming with a supernatural wisdom, with this incredible, amazing wisdom that confounds the wisdom of the world because our wisdom has failed. A couple years ago, I was home alone with my kids, and I was trying to get a little bit of work done upstairs while they played in the basement. And they played for a very short time, happily, and then I heard yelling and fighting, and so I did what any phenomenal, amazing father would do. I opened up the door and yelled down the stairs. I said, hey, take turns! And I walked away, and it worked for about a minute, and then the yelling started again, and so I offered them another piece of revolutionary brilliance. Share! And I added a bit of dad weight to it, so they knew I was serious. Don't make me come down there. And any of you who've ever had kids will be shocked to hear that was successful for 30 seconds. And then they're fighting again, and I realized their childlike wisdom had failed them. And so had the words of wisdom I sent down the stairs. And at some point when the word fails, the word has to become flesh and dwell among us. The only hope for our little situation was for me to go become incarnate in my basement. And so I did. So when God says, this is a wonderful counselor, it's his way of saying to Judah, listen, I know things are rough. I know your king's a moron. Look at him. Oh, my goodness, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you guys. He's dumb. The wisdom of the world is failing. There's conflict all around you, but I am coming downstairs. I'm going to embody this whole different type of wisdom. I'm going to give you a bigger, better vision, a revision of who I am and who I made you to be. That's what it means that this promised one is a wonderful counselor. So what does it mean that he's a mighty God? This one's super cool. The word for mighty in Hebrew is this word gibor. Can everybody say gibor with me? Gibor. Gibor means hero. So as I was saying, this is the hero God. He's not afraid to take on all the things that you're afraid of. He's not intimidated by any of the things you're intimidated by. He's the hero, and he has the power to set right that which was broken. He's strong where we are weak. The hero God is coming to set all things right and make all things new. How about everlasting Father? Why is it significant that this one God promised to the nation of Judah is an everlasting Father? Well, this word everlasting is a truth claim. See, the nation of Judah was surrounded by all these pagans who believed in a whole bunch of different gods. And they thought that the gods had like regional authority. Like if you went to the area where they worshiped Molech, then Molech was in charge. And if you went to the place where they worshiped Baal, then Baal was in charge. And gods could, they could be born and they could die just like humans. And also, gods were kind of like angry at humanity. Like the main job of humans was just to placate the gods. It was to like do the sacrifices or go through all the motions and achieve so that the gods wouldn't smite them and kill them, because gods hated people. Then Isaiah introduces this concept of the everlasting God. He's like, no. He's not like all those other gods. This is not a regional God. This is not a God who was born. This is not a God who can die. This is a God who was and is to come, who always was and always will be. He's not created. He's the creator. And he's sovereign. He has all the power, not just in a region, but over the entire universe that he formed with his own hands. Oh yeah, and he's Father. You've been trapped believing in all these gods and spirits who hate you and who want you to die and who are against you. But no, not this God. This God actually created humanity on purpose in his own image and invites every single human on the planet into an intimate, loving, protective, grace-filled relationship with himself. He's an everlasting Father. And he's the Prince of Peace. Like a prince is a governmental function. A prince is a thing that happens in a kingdom. And this kingdom will be defined by peace. And the word for peace here is this word shalom. And our English Bibles do an incredible job, just magnificent, of translating the Bible and giving us a picture of what it actually says. But there are just a few, like a handful of words and phrases from Hebrew that we don't have a cognate for. And so it's difficult for us to fully grasp what they mean. And shalom does mean peace, but limiting this word shalom to like what our minds think of when we hear the English word peace is like watching TV in black and white. There's so much color to it that's missing. Because shalom is an incredible concept of life being exactly the way God made it to be. It's full and complete economic, relational, spiritual, and physical flourishing. Not just surviving, but flourishing. Shalom means nothing is missing and nothing is broken. So Isaiah is saying, this is the Prince of Shalom. This is the Prince of nothing missing, nothing broken. And man, that's something worth hoping for Judah in 700 BC, because everything was missing and everything was broken. They looked around, there wasn't a whole lot of shalom to be found. There was economic brokenness, poverty, inequity, suffering, and want. There was societal brokenness, conflict, and infighting. There was political brokenness. They're being oppressed by Assyria, who's one of the most vicious and terrible empires in the history of the world. They would smash babies against rocks. They'd cut off their enemy's head and put them on stakes. These guys, the army would go full, like Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill that puts the lotion on. They would fillet their enemies and wear skin suits to the next battle as an intimidation factor. Like, hey, this is you. I'm going to wear you tomorrow. Like, these guys were masked up. And that's what Judah is up against. There's no shalom in Judah. And they didn't have any hope, not a shred, that their current government could bring that about. I don't know if that resonates with anybody else, but I feel like we have a frame of reference for that in 21st century America. I look around, I don't see a lot of shalom. I see a lot of things that I feel like are missing, and a whole lot of things that I think are broken. I see hatred and violence that add a deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. I see racism, depression, mass shootings, poverty, war, suffering, starvation. I look around me and I look at thousands of years of history. I don't have a whole lot of hope that there's a political party that can solve all that and set all of it right. With all due respect to the venerable words spoken by Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg 150 years ago, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall absolutely perish from this earth. And thank God for that. That's the only hope we have. It's the only hope Judah had. We're going to do the best we can for as long as we can, but we are holding out hope for something better, for the Prince of Peace to come set up a whole different kingdom where nothing is missing and nothing is broken anymore. The fact that he's a Prince of Peace means he came not just to solve our personal problems on the inside, he did that too, but also to create a space where poverty, injustice, violence, war, disease, and death are dead. That's why Judah needed to hear this prophecy 700 years before it would even come true. They were living in darkness and their hope had dried up. They're in this space where they're desperate for some sort of supernatural force to come in and turn their world upside down. And they needed to hear. They needed to know that what was coming centuries on down the line meant that darkness wasn't going to win. It meant that death did not get to write the final chapter of their story. It meant that hope was real. Even if it wasn't going to happen right away, there was something they could cling to for the future because the brokenness all around them was not the end. They needed to know it, and I wonder how many of us sitting in here right now need to know that hope is real too. I suspect that maybe the answer is all of us. If you're anything like me, you find yourself constantly living on this razor's edge between hope and despair. The message that God gave Judah 3,000 years ago is the message he wants to give us today. It's the big idea. I want every single one of us to walk out of here knowing that we know at the core of who we are. Hope is alive because Jesus is alive. Hope is alive because Jesus is alive. Jesus crashing into history, and that manger means we can live every single moment on the edge of hope. Because the wonderful counselor, hero, God, everlasting Father, Prince of Shalom, changes everything, including the way that we hope. When I talk hope, I'm not talking the hope we're used to. I want us to walk out here not just hoping, but hoping differently than we've hoped before. Because I think when we hear the word hope, when we think about hope, so much of the time we conceive of it as like wishing for something that maybe could possibly happen in the future. Like we hope for it, but we don't expect it. For instance, I'm hoping that at some point somebody invents a nice, easy, cheap cure for baldness so my kids don't call me a corn dog anymore. Like I'm hoping it. I'm not expecting it. I don't think we're on the verge of a breakthrough. It probably won't happen in 2019, but it could, maybe, somewhere. And that's a hope. It's not a good hope, but it's a hope. And those of you who are sitting in here right now, as Minnesota sports fans or Iowa State fans, you understand this kind of stupid, futile, useless hoping. You're like, it could. It's not illegal. It might, possibly, it won't. But it possibly could. You guys know what I'm talking about. This is the kind of hoping that we're used to hoping. But read Isaiah 9. God didn't say, hey, you guys, I don't know, maybe oppression will cease. A baby could come, could be good. See, I don't know. No, it's not what he said because it's not how he wants us to hope. I want us to walk out of here hoping differently. We need to shift our hoping from might to will. God's offering a different kind of hope than maybe kind of hope. See, no matter what's going on in your life right now, no matter how bad things seem, you have an unshakable hope that Jesus will set all things right and make all things new, and we can know that that's going to happen the same way Judah knew it 700 years before he was even born, because God promised that it would. The very last line of this prophecy is God's like holy seal. It's his assurance, his guarantee that our hope is secure. He closes it by saying, the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. The zeal. The passionate determination of a sovereign God and creator of the universe will accomplish it. It's not a maybe type of hope. It's not an if type of hope. It's a when type of hope. It's done, and that's what Christmas is all about. This manger thing of God like invading the shattered story of humanity, stepping into our pain and violence and hurt and suffering and loss and death so we could light it up and heal up our brokenness and reconcile us to God. That's what Christmas is all about. At Christmas, Jesus is our hope. He's a hope worth hoping. Not like presents or trees or carols or elves or reindeer. Jesus is a hope worth hoping. And maybe you're sitting here today and you've been feeling a heavy weight about the Christmas season. Maybe you walked in here this morning feeling depressed, beaten down, vulnerable, or broken. I think so many of us are at the end of ourselves so much of the time. And whether you've been dreading Christmas or just planning on using it as a temporary escape, because the hurt and frustration and pain and sickness and loss leaves you feeling more cursed than blessed, I want you to know that hope is alive because Jesus is alive. And you may have walked in here this morning feeling like your story is pretty much over. Like you've made so many bad choices, there aren't any good choices left for you. And I want you to know that hope is alive because Jesus is alive. God is shouting to you right now through the words of Isaiah, screaming into the deafening darkness that's surrounding you, I am not finished yet. I'm not finished with you, and I'm not finished with the world. The story of humanity is not over, no matter what you've done or what's been done to you, no matter what you've suffered, no matter how heavy it feels, no matter how long you've believed that you would never get out from under the weight of it. I am not finished yet until all things are set right and all things are made new. That's the real hope we have at Christmas because of Jesus. And the question is, will we live in it? Will we embrace it? We keep on letting our worst moments define us. Keep on letting the darkness crush us. Keep on believing that our problem, the one that's in front of us, is too big a mountain for God to climb, that there's no way forward. Will we let hope shrivel up and die inside of us, or will we believe that hope is alive because Jesus is alive? We walk out of here this morning knowing that there's a hope more powerful than the deepest darkness and a joy more powerful than the deepest sadness because Jesus came and he is everything that he promised he would be. I just believe this year your Christmas can look different. Your life can look different because this manger thing we call hope has the power to transform everything about our lives. In our greatest moments and in the darkest corners of our lives, it transforms the way we think about the future because Jesus is real and he's coming to set things right and make things new. And I challenge you this week to just live in that. To walk out of here and let that hope fill you up to overflowing, to let it seep in and pour into every crack and every broken space in your life and pour it out all over a world that's living in darkness and desperate for that kind of hope. Hope is alive because Jesus is alive and our world needs to know it. Will you guys pray with me? Thank you, God, for hope. We live in a difficult time. We see so much all around us that's heartbreaking, that's frustrating, that's scary and frightening. We just thank you that in the middle of all that, we have a lasting hope. Not an if hope, but a when hope. Because you are who you say you are, and you've been who you promised you've been, that we can be people who are just filled up with this knowledge that one day shalom is coming. One day there'll be nothing missing and nothing broken. And we pray that you'd allow that hope to just invade every inch of our souls this morning, that we'd walk out of here filled up to the point of overflowing with this hope. That you are a good God who loves us. And you're here, you came, and you're coming again to set all things right and make all things new. We thank you for that. In Jesus' name, amen.